My brother publicly called me our family leech. During the wedding, I paid $13,000 for. When I asked him why he lied to everyone about helping me, he laughed and said, "Because you think you're better than us." I stayed silent. That was 8 months ago. This morning, he was standing outside my apartment in tears. As the youngest child in a family of 8, I was the only one who never got an F or a D on their report card. Teachers would always tell me I was gifted, and whenever my parents tried to push my siblings into not being useless slobs for once, they'd always say the same thing: "It's okay, we got Mike." And maybe this should have pissed me off, but it didn't, because I wanted the same thing as them, to be the provider. So I let it motivate me to work harder, and by the time I was graduating high school, I had a 5.0 GPA and was on track for a scholarship to attend a really good university. And even though I worked a really poopy minimum wage job, I was still sending 70% of my paycheck home every week, because all of my siblings were still living with my parents, sharing bedrooms and bunk beds. So when I got my first real job, I was stoked. I even managed to rent my own apartment and invited my entire family over for the holidays. They were all congratulating me and looked proud. Well, more like relieved, but still, we were happy. I took the turkey out of the hot oven and plopped it down on my red and white checkered tablecloth. And as we sat down, one of my brothers, Trent, spoke. He told me he was getting married soon. I was just about to run and give him a hug, but then his face suddenly turned very sheepish. He started scraping the peas around the plate with his fork. But I already knew what was coming. "Trent, of course I'll pay for your wedding." His eyes widened with excitement. "Wait, are you effing serious?" I nodded, and he was beaming like a kid on Christmas. I joked about how I wasn't going to plan it though. The whole table broke out into laughter, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Looking back, I should have known something dark was going to happen. But at the time, you could literally feel everyone's spirits being lifted. When the banks reopened, I knew he was going to ask for $5,000, so I took out a check for $13,000 and mailed it to him. Me and my family had spent our entire lives struggling, wondering if we were going to go to bed hungry. For once, I just wanted us all to be happy, and it made him happy all right. Every day that week, he'd call and remind me how grateful him and his wife were for what I did. Turns out, that was the calm before the storm. Fast forward 8 months later, when the day finally arrived, the entire family were in suits, thanks to yours truly, and we looked like the picture-perfect family we always joked about, the one we always thought was out of our reach, and I knew it was money well spent. Then came the toast. Trent started off his speech with how grateful he was to his job for letting him be able to afford all of this. I froze for a second, but then I decided if he wanted to take the credit, then he could, because after all, it was his day, not mine. But then he continued, "As you can see, all of my beautiful family came to join me." That's when his finger pointed at me. Even Mike, aka our family leech. The entire crowd laughed and I stiffened slightly, not sure if I should break my poker face. "I mean, Mike, after all the money you borrowed from me, I'm surprised you even have time to come." By this point, everyone in the crowd was laughing so hard I could see their belly fat vibrating. I glanced at my family, who looked even more confused than me. I guess family really does stick together, and the freeloaders are no exception. Rage crawled up my spine. But before I could say anything, my sister Talia butt in. "Hey Trent, thank you for all this. Where is it you said you work again?" He proceeded to give the name of my role, and that's when Talia started pressing him. You see, she was the only one in the family who listened when I spoke, so she knew what questions to ask to catch him in his lie. By the end of their extremely public interrogation, his face went hot and his mouth couldn't keep up. I looked down at the ground to hide the smile creeping in. His wife stepped in when she realized the jig was up and made a joke about how the alcohol was getting to him. It was an alcohol-free event. I assumed that was just some petty sibling bicker, that it was over, but for the rest of the night, Trent was giving me the silent treatment, accompanied by sharp, dirty looks. I tried not to think about it, and instead focused on enjoying the wedding that I had paid for. But the next day, I woke up to a text from my boss. I called him immediately. "Mike, glad you called. Look, I got a concerning email last night," Dave said, his voice unusually serious. "Someone claiming to be your brother sent screenshots of what looks like you sharing confidential client information on social media." I sat up straight, fully awake now. "What? That's impossible. I would never do that." "I know, which is why I wanted to talk to you first. The screenshots look doctored to me, but HR is already involved. They're launching an investigation tomorrow." My mind was racing. "Can you forward me the email?" Dave sent it over, and sure enough, there were screenshots of what appeared to be my social media accounts, sharing sensitive financial information about our biggest client. Except I'd never posted anything like that. The screenshots were obviously fake, the font was slightly off, and they'd misspelled my username. But they were convincing enough to cause trouble, and the email was definitely from Trent. He'd used his personal email address, which included his full name. I called Trent immediately. No answer. I texted him, "I know what you did. Call me now." 3 hours later, he finally called back. "What's your problem?" he asked, like I was the one who'd done something wrong. I explained that I knew about the fake screenshots, and asked him what the heck he was thinking. His response made my fluids run cold. "You think you're so much better than the rest of us, don't you? Golden boy Mike with his fancy job and apartment, always making us look bad. Well, now you know how it feels to have your life messed with. Trent, you could get me fired. Over what? Because I paid for your wedding? That's exactly it. I didn't ask you to pay for everything. You just swooped in like some big hero, making me look like I couldn't provide for my own wife. Do you know how embarrassing that is? I was speechless. He was mad at me for helping him. And then at Thanksgiving, everyone was fawning all over your apartment and your job. Mike this, Mike that. Mom even asked why I couldn't be more like you. On my engagement day, I had no memory of this happening, but it didn't matter. In Trent's mind, I'd humiliated him, and now he was getting revenge. Delete the email and tell them it was a mistake, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Too late. I sent it to HR directly too, and your boss's boss, and that client you're always talking about. I felt like I was going to throw up. Why would you do this? We're family. Exactly. And family should lift each other up, not make each other feel like poop. He hung up, and I sat there in my hotel room, stunned. I immediately called Dave back and explained everything. He was sympathetic, but said the investigation would still have to happen. Company policy. The next week was heck. I had to meet with HR 3 times, showing them my actual social media accounts and explaining that the screenshots were fake. I had to sign affidavits and sit through uncomfortable meetings where people questioned my integrity. The client was furious until we proved the posts were fabricated. In the end, I kept my job, but I was put on probation for 3 months. The whole ordeal put a black mark on my record, just as I was being considered for a promotion. Meanwhile, Trent and Sarah were posting honeymoon photos from a beach resort that looked way more expensive than what my $13,000 should have covered. I later found out he'd only spent about $7,000 on the actual wedding and pocketed the rest for their honeymoon. I was hurt, angry, and confused. But mostly, I was worried about what Trent might do next. If he was willing to try to get me fired over perceived slights, what else was he capable of? I didn't have to wait long to find out. About a month after the wedding, my parents called. They sounded upset. "Mike, did you tell Trent we're losing the house?" my mom asked, her voice shaking. "What? No. Are you losing the house?" "No. But Trent came over yesterday saying you told him we were behind on mortgage payments and might get foreclosed on. He offered to let us move in with him and Sarah." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mom, I never said anything like that. Your mortgage is fine, right?" "Yes, we're all paid up. But why would Trent make that up?" I had a pretty good idea why, but I didn't want to drag my parents into our fight. I don't know. Maybe he misunderstood something I said. After I hung up, I got a text from Trent. "Stay in your lane or things will get worse." He was trying to turn my family against me, make them think I was spreading lies. I decided to lay low for a while, hoping he'd cool off, but Trent was just getting started. Over the next few months, he systematically tried to destroy my relationships with everyone in our family. He told our sister Megan that I'd said her new boyfriend was only with her for her money. She's a hairdresser and definitely not rich. He convinced our brother Kyle that I thought his kids were out-of-control brats. I adore my nieces and nephews. He even told our youngest sister Amber that I'd made fun of her for dropping out of community college. One by one, my siblings started giving me the cold shoulder. Family dinners became tense affairs where everyone seemed to be whispering about me. I tried to defend myself, but it was my word against Trent's, and he'd always been more charismatic than me. The worst part was, I still didn't fully understand why. Yes, I'd paid for his wedding, but that was months ago. Why was he still coming after me? I got my answer when my mom called me in tears one night. "Mike, I don't know what's going on between you and Trent, but it needs to stop. He just told us you've been stealing from Grandma's care fund." My grandmother had been in a nursing home for years. All the siblings contributed to a fund for her extra expenses. Things insurance didn't cover, like her favorite snacks, new pajamas, birthday gifts. I was in charge of the fund since I was good with money. "Mom, that's insane. I would never steal from Grandma. You can check the account anytime." Trent showed us bank statements, Mike. Money being transferred to your personal account. My heart sank. "Those have to be fake. I'll send you the real statements right now." I hung up and immediately logged into the Care Fund account. What I saw made my stomach drop. There were transfers to an account with my name on it, an account I'd never seen before. Someone had set up a fake account in my name and was siphoning money from Grandma's fund. I called the bank in a panic and reported the fraud. They froze the account and started an investigation, but the damage was done. My family thought I was stealing from my own grandmother. I drove to my parents' house the next day with printouts of all the bank's fraud documentation. My mom let me in, but her eyes were red from crying. My dad wouldn't even look at me. "I can prove I didn't do this," I said, spreading the papers on their kitchen table. "Someone set up a fake account in my name. The bank is investigating it as fraud." My mom looked at the papers skeptically. Who would do such a thing? I took a deep breath. "I think it was Trent." My dad finally looked up. "That's a serious accusation, Mike." "I know, but he's been trying to turn everyone against me since his wedding. He tried to get me fired by sending fake screenshots to my boss. He told you guys I said you were losing the house. He's been lying to everyone about me." My parents exchanged looks. "But why would he do that?" my mom asked. "I think he resents me for having a good job, for being able to pay for his wedding. He feels like I'm showing him up or something." My dad shook his head. "That doesn't sound like Trent." "Call the bank yourself," I said, pushing their phone toward them. "Verify everything I just told you." My mom made the call, and I watched her face as the bank representative confirmed my story. There was a fraudulent account. It was being investigated. No, they couldn't confirm who set it up, but it definitely wasn't authorized by me. When she hung up, she looked confused and hurt. "I don't know what to think anymore. Just promise me you'll keep an open mind," I said. "And maybe don't tell Trent about this conversation yet. If he is behind this, I don't want him to know we're onto him." They reluctantly agreed, and I left feeling slightly better. At least they were willing to consider that I might be telling the truth. The next day, I got got a call from the nursing home. Grandma was upset because she hadn't received her weekly visit from me. I was confused. I always visited on Sundays, and it was only Thursday. Someone called and said you wouldn't be coming anymore, the nurse explained. They said to tell her you were too busy with your new girlfriend. I didn't have a girlfriend, and I would never skip my visits with Grandma. Who called and said that? A man. He said he was your brother. I was furious now. Trent was messing with Grandma, a 92-year-old woman with dementia who looked forward to my visits all week. This was crossing a line. I drove straight to the nursing home and spent the afternoon with Grandma, assuring her I wasn't abandoning her. She seemed relieved but confused. The damage control was exhausting. On my way home, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Sarah, Trent's wife. "Mike, I need to talk to you," she said, her voice hushed like she was hiding from someone. "About Trent. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop halfway between our homes. When I got there, Sarah was already waiting, fidgeting with a napkin and looking nervous. "I think Trent needs help," she said as soon as I sat down. "He's obsessed with you. He stays up late making these plans to take you down. He has a whole folder on his laptop labeled Mike's Downfall." I felt a chill run through me. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because it's not right. And," she hesitated, "he's starting to scare me. Last night he was talking about how he might get access to your apartment to plant substances. I don't know what, but it sounded illicit." My mind raced. Trent had a key to my apartment. I'd given it to him years ago for emergencies and never asked for it back. "Has he always been like this?" I asked. Sarah shook her head. He's always been competitive with you, but this is different. It started around the time you offered to pay for our wedding. At first, he was grateful, but then he started saying you only did it to show off, that you were trying to emasculate him. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was just trying to help. I know that. Deep down, I think Trent knows it too, but he's convinced himself you're out to get him somehow. She looked down at her coffee. "There's something else. The money for the wedding. Trent only spent about half of it on the actual wedding. The rest went to your honeymoon. I figured that out." She looked surprised. "No, not the honeymoon. We used my parents' timeshare. The rest of the money went to gambling debts. Trent has a problem. He's been hiding it from everyone, even me until recently." This was a twist I hadn't expected. Gambling debts? How bad is it? Bad enough that he was desperate for that wedding money, and now he's desperate again. That's why he's been taking money from your grandmother's account. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "You know about that?" She nodded, tears in her eyes. "I found the fake bank statements on his computer. He's been planning this for months, setting up that account in your name. I confronted him about it last night and he didn't take it well. I noticed for the first time that she was wearing long sleeves despite the warm weather." "Sarah, did he hurt you?" She pulled up her sleeve slightly, revealing a bruise on her wrist. "He grabbed me, said I needed to mind my own business. That's when I knew I had to talk to you." I was speechless. This was way worse than I thought. Trent wasn't just being petty, he was dangerous. "You need to get somewhere safe," I said. "Do your parents live nearby?" She nodded. "I'm staying with them now. Told Trent I needed some space." "Good. Stay there. And Sarah, thank you for telling me all this. I know it couldn't have been easy." She gave me a sad smile. "Trent wasn't always like this. I keep hoping the man I fell in love with is still in there somewhere." After Sarah left, I sat in that coffee shop for a long time, trying to process everything. My brother was stealing from our grandmother and framing me for it. He was turning our family against me out of some twisted resentment, and now he was potentially violent. I needed evidence, something concrete to show my family what was really going on, and I needed to protect myself from whatever Trent was planning next. First things first, I called a locksmith and had my locks changed that same day. Then I installed a basic security camera system that would alert me if anyone entered my apartment. Next, I contacted the bank handling Grandma's care fund. They confirmed they were investigating the fraudulent account, but said it could take weeks to determine who set it up. I couldn't wait that long. I remembered that Trent had used his personal email to send those fake screenshots to my boss. If he'd been sloppy once, maybe he'd been sloppy again. I asked the bank if they had any contact information associated with the fraudulent account. They couldn't give me details due to the ongoing investigation, but the customer service rep hesitated just long enough when I mentioned Trent's email address that I knew I was on the right track. Now I needed to warn my family without sounding like I was just trying to get back at Trent. I decided to start with Talia, the sister who'd called Trent out at the wedding. She'd always been the most level-headed of my siblings. I invited her to lunch and laid out everything. The fake screenshots sent to my work, the lies Trent had been telling everyone, what Sarah had told me about the gambling and the stolen money. Talia listened without interrupting, her expression growing more concerned with each revelation. When I finished, she sat back and sighed. "I knew something was off with him lately, but this is... wow. You believe me?" I asked, relieved. "Of course I do. Trent's always been jealous of you, Mike, even when we were kids. Remember how he used to accidentally spill stuff on your homework? Or tell mom and dad you'd done something wrong when you hadn't?" I hadn't connected those childhood incidents to what was happening now, but Talia was right. This pattern had been there all along. "The question is," Talia continued, "what do we do about it? If we confront him directly, he'll just deny everything." "I need proof," I said. "Something undeniable that shows he's behind all this." Talia thought for a moment. "What about his laptop? Sarah said that's where he keeps all his plans, right? If we could get access to that, I'm not breaking into his house house, Talia. No, but Sarah might be willing to help. If she's already left him and is worried about what he might do next, maybe she'd let us see what's on that computer. It was worth a poop. I called Sarah that evening and explained our idea. She was hesitant at first. Technically, the laptop belonged to both of them since they'd bought it with combined funds, but it felt like an invasion of privacy. I understand, I said, but he's stolen from our grandmother, tried to get me fired, and is turning our family against each other. We need to stop him before he does something even worse. Sarah finally agreed. Trent was working late the next day, so she'd go back to their apartment to get some more of her things and take the laptop while she was there. The plan worked. Sarah texted me the next evening saying she had the laptop and would meet us at Talia's apartment. When I arrived, Sarah was already there, looking nervous but determined. I haven't opened it yet, she said. It's password protected, but I know what he uses. She typed in the password, and we were in. The desktop was cluttered with icons, but sure enough, there was a folder labeled Mike. Sarah clicked on it, and dozens of files appeared. Screenshots of my social media, copies of emails I'd sent, photos of me that had been edited to look like I was with prostitutes or doing substances. Jesus, Talia whispered. He's been planning this for months. We found the fake bank statements for Grandma's care fund, templates for more fake screenshots to send to my work, and even a document titled Phase 3 that outlined plans to plant substances in my apartment and then call in an anonymous tip to the police. It was all there, undeniable evidence that Trent had been systematically trying to destroy my life. We saved copies of everything to a flash drive. Then Sarah closed the laptop. What now? She asked. Now we call a family meeting, I said. I texted everyone in the family except Trent, asking them to meet at my parents' house the next day. I told them it was important, a family emergency. Most of them agreed right away, though a few seemed hesitant. I couldn't blame them after all the lies Trent had been spreading about me. The next evening, I showed up at my parents' place with Talia and Sarah. My stomach was in knots. I'd barely slept the night before, going over and over what I was going to say. How do you tell your family that one of their own has been systematically trying to ruin your life? When we walked in, everyone was already there. My parents, my other siblings, even my grandma, who my mom had picked up from the nursing home for the occasion. They all looked confused and worried. My brother Kyle immediately asked where Trent was. That's part of why we're here, I said, setting up my laptop on the coffee table. There's something you all need to see. I connected the flash drive and pulled up the files we'd copied from Trent's computer. For the next 20 minutes, the room was dead silent, except for occasional gasps as I showed them everything. The fake bank statements, the doctored photos, the plans to plant substances in my apartment, all of it. When I finished, my mom had tears streaming down her face. My dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in the last half hour. My siblings were in various states of shock and disbelief. This can't be real, my brother Kyle said, shaking his head. Trent wouldn't do this. Sarah spoke up then. It's real. I found all of this on our laptop. He's been obsessed with taking Mike down for months. But why? My mom asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I explained what Sarah had told me about Trent's gambling problem, how he'd used most of the wedding money to pay off debts, and how he'd grown increasingly resentful of me. He sees Mike as a threat, Sarah said. Like Mike's success somehow makes him a failure. My grandma, who had been quietly listening, suddenly spoke up. He always was a jealous boy. Even as a little thing, he'd throw fits if anyone got more attention than him. Just as we were discussing what to do next, the front door slammed open. Trent stood there, his face twisted with rage. What the heck is this? A family meeting without me? The room went silent. Sarah visibly flinched and moved closer to Talia. I stood up, positioning myself between Trent and the rest of the family. We know what you've been doing, Trent, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We've seen everything on your laptop. His eyes darted to Sarah, then to the computer on the coffee table. For a split second, I saw panic flash across his face before it was replaced with anger. You went through my private files? That's illicit. I could have you apprehended. For what? I asked. Finding out you've been stealing from Grandma? Or that you tried to get me fired? Or maybe for your plans to plant substances in my apartment? Trent's face went pale. He looked around the room, seeming to realize for the first time that everyone was staring at him with horror and disappointment. You don't understand, he said, his voice suddenly desperate. Mike has everything handed to him. Everything comes easy to him. The rest of us have to struggle, but not Golden Boy Mike. My dad stood up then. That's not true, Trent. Nothing was handed to Mike. He worked for everything he has, just like the rest of you could have. Oh, so now you're taking his side? Trent shouted. Of course you are. You always do. This isn't about sides, my mom said, her voice stronger now. This is about what you've done. You stole from your own grandmother. You tried to destroy your brother's reputation. You lied to all of us. Trent looked around wildly, like a cornered animal. Sarah put you up to this, didn't she? She's been trying to turn everyone against me. Sarah shook her head, tears in her eyes. No, Trent, you did this to yourself. For a moment, I thought Trent might lunge at her. I tensed, ready to intervene, but instead, he turned and stormed out, slamming the door so hard a family photo fell off the wall and shattered. The room was silent for a long moment after he left. Then my dad picked up his phone. I'm calling the police. What he did with that bank account is fraud. Wait, I said, surprising myself. Let's think about this first. Everyone looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Mike, he tried to ruin your life, Talia said. He was going to plant substances in your apartment. I know, and I'm not saying there shouldn't be consequences, but maybe there's a better way to handle this than getting him apprehended. My mom gave me a sad smile. Always trying to fix everything, aren't you? We spent the next hour discussing options. In the end, we decided on a two-part approach. First, Trent would need to get help for his gambling dependency. Real help, not just promises to do better. Second, he'd have to make restitution for the money he stole from Grandma's care fund. My dad called Trent and laid out these terms. If he agreed, we wouldn't go to the police. If he refused, we'd file charges for fraud. Trent didn't call back that night, or the next day. We were starting to think he'd skip town when Sarah got a text from him 3 days later, asking to meet at a diner near their apartment. I went with Sarah, partly for moral support, and partly because I wasn't sure Trent wouldn't try something stupid. We found him sitting in a booth at the back, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were bloodshot, and he had at least 3 days of stubble on his face. I effed up, he said as soon as we sat down. No hello, no small talk. I effed up bad. Sarah just nodded, keeping her distance on the far side of the booth. I don't even know when it started, Trent continued. The gambling, I mean. Just small bets at first, then bigger ones to try to win back what I lost. Before I knew it, I was in deep. And blaming me somehow made it easier? I asked. He looked down at his coffee. I guess. You were always the successful one, the smart one. I was just me, average at everything. When you offered to pay for the wedding, part of me was grateful, but another part felt, I don't know, humiliated, like I couldn't even provide that for Sarah. So you decided to take me down a few notches? It wasn't that calculated at first. I was just angry, but then it kind of snowballed. We talked for nearly 2 hours. Trent admitted to everything, the fake bank account, the lies he'd told the family about me, all of it. He seemed genuinely remorseful, though I wasn't sure how much of that was because he got caught. In the end, he agreed to Dad's terms. He'd pay back every cent he took from Grandma's fund, plus interest. He'd also enroll in a gambling dependency program and see a therapist for his anger issues. And you'll tell everyone in the family the truth, I added. All of it. No more lies. He nodded, looking miserable but resigned. The next few months were rough. Trent moved back in with our parents temporarily after Sarah filed for separation. He got a second job to pay back the money he stole. Every Sunday, he'd come with me to visit Grandma and apologize again, even though her dementia meant she often didn't remember what he was apologizing for. My relationship with Trent was strained, to put it mildly. I wasn't sure I'd ever fully trust him again, but I tried to remember what Sarah had said, that the Trent who did all those things wasn't the real Trent, that somewhere inside was still the brother I'd grown up with. 6 months after our family meeting, Trent invited me to grab a beer after work. I was hesitant, but decided to go. We met at this dive bar halfway between our jobs, the kind of place with peanut shells on the floor and sports memorabilia covering every inch of the walls. I've been seeing a therapist, Trent said after we got our drinks. Turns out I've got some issues. I nearly choked on my beer trying not to laugh. You don't say. He cracked a small smile. Yeah, well, apparently I've been competing with you my whole life, and losing, at least in my own head. The therapist says I've got this thing called an inferiority complex. Sounds serious, I said, keeping my tone light. It kind of is. Makes you do crazy poop. He took a long sip of his beer. Like try to ruin your brother's life because you're jealous of him. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. Anyway, Trent continued, I'm working on it, and I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry. Really sorry. What I did was messed up on so many levels. Yeah, it was, I agreed, but I appreciate the apology. We sat in awkward silence for a minute before Trent spoke again. The thing is, I always thought you had it easy, that everything just came naturally to you. But Sarah made me realize something. You worked your butt off for everything you have. Nothing was handed to you. I shrugged. I just did what needed to be done. That's just it. You always do what needs to be done. For everyone, including me. He looked me in the eye for the first time that night. I didn't deserve that wedding money, or any of the other times you've helped me out. Maybe not, I said, but that's what family does. We help each other. Trent nodded slowly. I'm trying to be better, to actually deserve having you as a brother. It wasn't an instant fix. Trust takes a long time to rebuild once it's broken. But that conversation was a start. Over the next year, Trent stuck with his therapy and gambling dependency meetings. He paid back every cent he owed to Grandma's care fund. He even got a promotion at work, a legitimate one this time, not a made-up title to impress people. Sarah and Trent never got back together. She moved to another state for a fresh start, but she still keeps in touch with Talia occasionally. Last I heard, she was dating a nice guy who works as a veterinarian. As for me, I eventually got that promotion at work. I'm still the one my family calls when they need help, but now I'm better at setting boundaries. I don't automatically reach for my wallet every time someone mentions a financial problem. Trent and I grab a beer every couple of weeks now. Our relationship isn't what it was before all this happened. It's different, more cautious on my part, but in some ways, it's more honest than it ever was. Last month, he came to me with an idea for a small business he wants to start. Nothing fancy, just a mobile car detailing service. He had a business plan, market research, everything. He wasn't asking for money. He'd saved up enough for the initial investment himself. He just wanted my opinion. I looked over his numbers, suggested a few tweaks, and told him I thought it could work. The pride on his face when I said that reminded me of when we were kids, and he'd finally master some skill he'd been working on. Thanks, Mike, he said, as he gathered up his papers. It means a lot coming from you. Just don't forget who to call when you need your taxes done, I joked. He laughed, then got serious again. I won't forget anything you've done for me, the good or the bad. It's all part of how I got here. I nodded, understanding what he meant. We all have our journeys, our struggles. Trent's just happened to include trying to destroy my life for a while. But family is complicated like that. You hurt each other, you help each other, you forgive when you can, and set boundaries when you need to. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you come out stronger on the other side.